The bitter December wind swept through Boston's narrow streets, carrying whispers of approaching snow. 12-year-old Maya Johnson adjusted her worn wool cap, a cast-off she'd found at a church donation bin. 6 months on the streets had taught her the art of survival, but tonight felt particularly harsh. Behind Miss Martha's coffee shop, Maya had created what passed for home. A sheltered corner where the heating vent pushed out warm air and cardboard boxes provided some insulation. The spot wasn't much, but it was safer than the shelters where questions were asked and papers were required. As she settled into her nightly routine, Maya's small fingers found their way to the star-shaped pendant hanging from her neck. It was a ritual that brought comfort, like a prayer or a lullaby. The necklace was her most precious possession, not for any monetary value, but because it carried her mother's essence. "Time for dinner, Mom," she whispered to the night air, pulling out half a sandwich Miss Martha had slipped her earlier. The kind-hearted coffee shop owner never made a fuss about Maya's presence, understanding that some kindnesses are best offered quietly. Memories of her mother, Sarah, floated through her mind as she ate. They had been happy once in their small apartment, filled with second-hand furniture and endless love. Sarah would sing while preparing dinner, her voice carrying through their two-room home like sunshine. Even when the cancer came, she never stopped smiling, never stopped making Maya feel safe. The pendant caught the dim light from a nearby street lamp. Maya knew every detail by heart, the tiny scratches on its surface, the way it warmed against her skin, and the inscription that read, "To my eternal love, Sarah, 2003. Her mother rarely spoke about the man who gave her the necklace, saying only that he had been her greatest love story, one that ended too soon. Now huddled in her corner as night descended over Boston, Maya held onto the necklace like an anchor. It was more than jewelry. It was a promise, a memory, and perhaps, though she didn't know it yet, a key to her future. The 47th floor of FAI, Parker Technologies, offered a commanding view of Boston's skyline. William Parker, now approaching 50, stood at his window, watching the city transition from dusk to darkness. Success had carved its story into his features, distinguished grey at his temples, fine lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent in boardrooms rather than living rooms. "Mr. Parker?" His assistant's voice through the intercom broke his reverie. "The board meeting begins in 5 minutes." "Thank you, Janet," he replied, adjusting his tie with practiced precision. Another evening of quarterly reports and strategic planning awaited. This was his life now, carefully orchestrated, predictably successful, and meticulously empty. In moments like these, between the endless meetings and decisions that shaped his empire, William sometimes allowed himself to remember fragments of a different life, one that existed before Parker Technologies, before the Forbes covers, before he became the man whose name opened every door in Boston's business world. The memory was old, faded like a photograph left too long in sunlight. A summer romance from his college years, when dreams were still taking shape and success was measured in smaller victories. He'd been barely 23 then, with grand plans and the arrogance of youth. She had been different, special in a way he struggled to define now, decades later. The board meeting proceeded as usual, discussions of market expansions, profit projections, and strategic acquisitions. William maintained his commanding presence, though his thoughts occasionally drifted to that distant summer. It was strange how certain memories could surface unexpectedly, like finding an old letter in a forgotten book. As the meeting concluded, and board members filed out, the winter night had fully claimed the city. William gathered his belongings, declining his driver's usual offer to wait. Sometimes, especially on nights like these, he preferred to walk, letting the cold air clear his mind of ghosts from the past. He should have known better than to stay so late, especially given the recent crime reports in the area. But some lessons, like some memories, choose their own moment to resurface. The night air bit at William's face as he left the office, his mind clouded with fragments of board meeting discussions and echoes of a long-forgotten past. The streets, usually bustling with activity, had grown eerily quiet. He should have accepted his driver's offer, but the desire for solitude had won out. It happened in an instant. 3 shadows detached themselves from a darkened alley, surrounding William before he could react. A sharp pain exploded at the back of his head, and the world tilted sideways. His briefcase disappeared, along with his wallet and phone. By the time the fog cleared from his mind, he found himself stumbling through unfamiliar back streets, disoriented and alone. Maya heard the commotion from her makeshift shelter behind Miss Martha's coffee shop. Curiosity warred with caution as she peered. Around the corner, a man in an expensive suit was staggering down the alley, one hand pressed against the brick wall for support. Something about his vulnerable state struck a chord within her. He reminded her of her mother in those final days, lost and in need of help. "Sir?" she called softly, approaching with the wariness of a street-smart child. "Are you okay?" William's blurred vision struggled to focus on the small figure before him. A young girl, no more than 12 or 13, with eyes that seemed too old for her face. In his confused state, all he could manage was a weak nod. "Miss Martha's shop is close," Maya said, her voice steady despite her apprehension. "She can help." Without waiting for a response, Maya gently took his arm, guiding him towards the warm glow of the coffee shop's back entrance. Miss Martha, alerted by the commotion, was already waiting with a first aid kit and a concerned frown. As the kind-hearted woman tended to William's wounds, Maya hovered nearby, unsure of her place in this unfolding drama. That's when William noticed it, a flash of something familiar around the girl's neck, a star-shaped pendant that caught the light, stirring long-buried memories. In that moment, still dazed from the attack, William couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was about to change everything. Miss Martha's gentle hands worked efficiently, cleaning William's wound with the practiced ease of someone used to tending to the forgotten souls of the city. The back room of her coffee shop was warm, the scent of freshly brewed coffee a stark contrast to the cold, unforgiving streets outside. William's eyes, still slightly unfocused from the attack, kept drifting to the young girl who had come to his aid. There was something about her, a resilience, a quiet strength that seemed at odds with her threadbare clothes and too thin frame. But it was the necklace that truly captured his attention, drawing his gaze like a beacon in the night. "That's a beautiful necklace," he said softly, his voice hoarse. The girl's hand instinctively went to the pendant, a gesture so achingly familiar that William felt his heart constrict. "It was my mum's," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes, when they met his, held a depth of sadness that no child should know. "She said it was from someone special, someone who loved her very much." William's fingers trembled as he reached for his wallet, then remembered it had been stolen. But he didn't need a photo to confirm what his heart already knew. "Your mother," he said carefully. "What was her name?" The girl hesitated, years of living on the streets making her wary of sharing personal information. But something in William's eyes, a mix of hope and fear, made her decide to trust. "Sarah," she said. "Sarah Williams." The name hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken history. Miss Martha, sensing the weight of the moment, quietly excused herself to the front of the shop. William felt as if the ground had shifted beneath him. He looked at the girl, really looked at her, and saw echoes of Sarah in her features. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her smile. How had he not seen it immediately? "And you?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "What's your name?" "Maya," she replied. "Maya Johnson." As their eyes met, the star pendant caught the light. Once more, its glow seeming to illuminate the invisible threads of fate that had brought them together in this moment. The silence that followed Maya's introduction was thick with unasked questions. William's mind raced, trying to piece together a puzzle with too many missing parts. Sarah Williams, a name he hadn't allowed himself to think about in years, suddenly brought back to life through this child's eyes. "How?" William started, then paused, unsure how to frame the multitude of questions swirling in his mind. "How long ago did your mother—" He couldn't bring himself to finish the sentence. Maya's eyes clouded with a grief that seemed too heavy for her young shoulders. "6 months ago," she said softly. "Cancer." The word hung in the air, cold and unforgiving. William felt a pang of guilt. He should have known, should have somehow sensed that Sarah was gone, but life, his life, had moved on, leaving no room for old flames or what-ifs. "I'm so sorry," he said, the words feeling inadequate. "Your mother, she was an extraordinary woman." Maya's eyes widened slightly. "You knew her?" The question was tinged with both hope and suspicion. William nodded slowly. "A long time ago," he said. "We were close." The understatement of the century, he thought ruefully. Maya's hand went to the necklace again, a gesture William now recognized as a source of comfort for her. "She never told me much about my father," she said hesitantly. "Just that he was someone she loved very much, but life took them in different directions." William's heart raced. Could it be possible? The timing. It could fit. But surely Sarah would have told him if... "Maya," he said gently, "that necklace. May I see it closer?" With slight hesitation, Maya unclasped the necklace and handed it to William. As soon as it touched his palm, memories flooded back. The antique shop where he'd found it, the look on Sarah's face when he'd given it to her, the promises they'd made under a summer sky. He turned it over, his fingers shaking slightly as he read the inscription he'd had engraved so many years ago. "To my eternal love, Sarah, 2003. William looked up at Maya, seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time. "I think," he said softly, "we have a lot to talk about." The weight of revelation hung heavy in Miss Martha's back room. William gently handed the necklace back to Maya, watching as she clasped it around her neck once more. The familiar action stirred something deep within him, a mix of nostalgia and newfound wonder. "Your mother," William began, his voice soft with reverence. "She was my first love. We were young, barely out of high school. I had big dreams and she—" He paused, a wistful smile touching his lips. "She had a way of making every dream seem possible." Maya listened intently, her eyes wide with a hunger for information about the mother she'd lost too soon. "She never told me your name," she said, "but sometimes when she thought I was asleep, I'd hear her talking to your picture." William's heart clenched at the thought of Sarah holding onto their memories all these years. "We lost touch," he admitted. "I went abroad to study and then work just took over. I always meant to find her again, to explain." Maya's expression suddenly shifted, as if remembering something important. "Wait," she said, reaching for her worn backpack. Before the end, Mom gave me something. She made me promise to keep it safe until I found you." From the depths of her bag, Maya pulled out an envelope. It was creased and slightly worn, but still sealed. William's name was written across the front in handwriting he'd know anywhere. With trembling fingers, William accepted the letter. He looked at Maya, a silent question in his eyes. She nodded, giving him permission to read what might be Sarah's final words. Carefully, he opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. "My dearest William, if you're reading this, it means our paths have finally crossed again. though not in the way I'd hoped. There's so much I need to tell you, so much I should have said years ago. William's voice caught as he read. Maya watched, her heart pounding, as this man who had once loved her mother began to uncover truths long hidden. Miss Martha quietly slipped back into the room, sensing the gravity of the moment. She placed a comforting hand on Maya's shoulder as William continued to read, his expression a kaleidoscope of emotions: joy, sorrow, regret, and something that looked almost like hope. William's hands trembled as he continued reading Sarah's letter, his voice barely above a whisper. There's something you need to know about Maya. She isn't your biological daughter, William. I adopted her when she was an infant, a few years after we parted ways. But in every way that matters, she is our child. She has your determination and my spirit. I never reached out to you all these years because I couldn't bear to disrupt the successful life you built. But now, facing the end, I have one last request. Please look after our girl. She needs someone to believe in her the way you once believed in me. William paused, his eyes meeting Maya's. The young girl sat frozen, her expression a mix of fear and desperate hope. He took a deep breath and continued, I never stopped loving you, William, and I hope you can find it in your heart to love Maya as I have. She is extraordinary, and she deserves a chance at the life we once dreamed of together. Forever yours, Sarah. As William lowered the letter, the room fell into a heavy silence. Maya's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her small frame tense as if preparing for rejection. Miss Martha stood nearby, a silent pillar of support. Maya, William finally said, his voice thick with emotion, I don't know what to say. This is all so unexpected. He ran a hand through his hair, mind reeling from the revelations. It's okay, Maya said quietly, starting to stand. You don't have to do anything. I'm used to taking care of myself. No, William said quickly, reaching out to stop her. That's not what I meant. I need a moment to process this. But I want you to know, I have no intention of abandoning you. Maya's eyes widened with a glimmer of hope. Really? William nodded, a small smile forming on his lips. Your mother was right about one thing. You do have her spirit, and if you're anything like her, I'd be a fool to let you walk out of my life. Miss Martha discreetly wiped a tear from her eye, watching as the first tentative bridge began to form between these two lost souls. So, William said softly, what do you say we figure this out together? The following days were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. William, driven by a mixture of guilt, hope, and a growing sense of responsibility, threw himself into making arrangements for Maya. The stark contrast between his penthouse and her life on the streets was not lost on either of them. Maya, for her part, approached her new circumstances with a cautious optimism. Years of self-reliance made it difficult for her to fully trust this sudden turn of events, but the warmth in William's eyes when he looked at her, a mixture of wonder and determination, gave her hope. Miss Martha became an unexpected pillar of support. Her coffee shop turned into a neutral meeting ground, a place where Maya felt safe and William could shed the weight of his corporate persona. You're doing fine, Miss Martha reassured William one afternoon as they watched Maya poring over a book in a quiet corner. These things take time. William nodded, his eyes never leaving Maya. I want to do right by her. By Sarah. The legal process of guardianship was complex, but William's resources smoothed many paths. Still, there were hurdles that money couldn't overcome. Maya's reluctance to talk about her time on the streets, her nightmares that sometimes left her calling out for her mother, the way she would instinctively hoard food. These were challenges that required patience and understanding. They had their moments of connection too. William discovered Maya had inherited Sarah's love for old movies, and their first real bonding moment came during an impromptu viewing of Casablanca on a rainy Sunday afternoon. Mum used to say, "This was the most romantic film ever made," Maya said softly, her eyes glued to the screen. William smiled, memories flooding back. "She made me watch it at least a dozen times when we were dating." As the final scene played out, William noticed Maya clutching Sarah's necklace, tears silently streaming down her face. Without a word, he gently put his arm around her shoulders. To his surprise and relief, she didn't pull away. It was a small step, but an important one. As the credits rolled, both William and Maya felt a subtle shift, the first real sense that maybe, just maybe, they could become a family. As weeks turned into months, William found himself navigating uncharted waters of parenthood. The corporate world, once his entire life, now took a backseat to school runs, homework help, and the delicate task of nurturing Maya's dreams. One evening, as they sat surrounded by Maya's art supplies, her newfound passion, William noticed her sketching a familiar shape. "The necklace?" he asked softly. Maya nodded, her pencil carefully tracing the star's outline. "I was thinking about Mom," she said, her voice quiet, "about how she always wanted to help other kids like me." William felt a pang in his heart, remembering Sarah's compassionate nature. She had a way of seeing the best in people, he mused, of wanting to bring out their potential. A thoughtful silence fell between them, broken only by the soft scratch of Maya's pencil on paper. Suddenly she looked up, her eyes bright with an idea. "What if we could do that?" she asked eagerly. "Help other kids, I mean, like Mom would have wanted." William felt something stir within him, a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. "You know," he said slowly, "I think you might be onto something there." Over the next few weeks, an idea began to take shape. William leveraged his business acumen and connections, while Maya provided insight into the real needs of children in challenging situations. Together, they drafted plans for the Sarah Williams Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to supporting underprivileged youth through education, arts, and mentorship programs. As they presented their proposal to the Parker Technologies Board, William felt a sense of pride he'd never experienced in his corporate achievements. Maya stood beside him, articulating their vision with a passion that left the board members visibly moved. "Your mother would be so proud of you," William whispered as they left the boardroom, the foundation's approval secured. Maya's hand found its way to the star pendant, a smile playing on her lips. "Of us," she corrected gently. "She'd be proud of us." In that moment, William realized that in honoring Sarah's memory, he and Maya had forged something beautiful, a legacy of love that would touch countless lives. 6 months had passed since that fateful night behind Miss Martha's coffee shop. The Parker penthouse, once a monument to solitary success, now echoed with the sounds of life and laughter. Maya's presence had transformed the space, filling it with colorful artwork, well-worn books, and the occasional misplaced soccer cleat. William stood by the window watching as the city awakened to a new day. The weight of his Rolex felt different now, no longer a symbol of his corporate achievements, but a reminder of the precious time he'd been given with Maya. "Dad?" Maya's voice, still tentative with the new title, pulled him from his reverie. "Are you ready?" William turned, a warm smile spreading across his face. Maya stood there nervously fidgeting with Sarah's necklace, a habit she'd never quite shaken. Today was a big day for both of them. "Ready as I'll ever be," he replied, straightening his tie. "How about you, kiddo?" Maya nodded, her eyes bright with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. "I think so. Do Do you think Mom would be happy?" William's heart swelled at the question. He knelt down, meeting Maya's eyes. "I know she would be. She'd be so proud of you, Maya, just as I am." Together they made their way to the courthouse. The adoption process had been long and at times challenging, but today it would finally be official. As they waited outside the judge's chambers, William noticed Maya's hand trembling slightly. "Hey," he said softly, "remember what we talked about? This doesn't change who you are or where you came from, it just means we're choosing each other officially." Maya nodded, her grip tightening on the star pendant. "A family of the heart," she whispered, echoing the phrase they'd coined during late-night conversations. As the doors opened and their names were called, William felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. For Sarah's love, for the twist of fate that brought Maya into his life, and for the second chance at building the family he'd once dreamed of. Hand in hand, William and Maya stepped forward, ready to make their choice official, not just in the eyes of the law, but in their hearts as well. 1 year after the foundation's launch, William and Maya stood side by side at the grand opening of the Sarah Williams Community Center. The building, once an abandoned warehouse, now bustled with life, children laughing in art classes, teenagers hunched over computers in the learning lab, and parents attending job training workshops. As the ribbon-cutting ceremony concluded, Maya's hand instinctively went to her necklace. The star pendant, now accompanied by a smaller one William had given her on her birthday, gleamed in the sunlight. "You know," William said softly, "I think your mum's watching over us right now." Maya nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I can feel it too," she whispered. Together, they walked into the center, ready to continue the legacy of love and hope that Sarah had started so many years ago. The stars around their necks glowed, a constant reminder that family in its truest form is born in the heart.